what we're talking about today is dementia. And unfortunately, most of us have been touched by dementia in some way or another, either by caring for a parent or a spouse or a friend, or the secret fear that we have it. And it can be devastating to the person and to the family. And now I'm going to introduce two really courageous people who are going to talk about what this journey has been like for them. Karin is going to talk about what it's like to have dementia, and then Keith is going to talk about what it was like to be a caregiver for 8 years for somebody with dementia. I'm going to ask that you hold questions until each presenter is finished, and then there'll be time for questions in between and at the end. So, Karin.
So not only do I have dementia, but I have travel fatigue. I just got in at 5:30 this morning from the West Coast US. So I'll do my best here. So it's been 2 years since, at the age of 71, I was diagnosed with vascular dementia. The diagnosis wasn't exactly a surprise, as my mother was diagnosed with vascular dementia at age 72. In my mother's case, her brain function decreased steadily for 24 years until she died 1 month ago at age 96.
Whoa.
But almost all of those years were just going downhill, downhill, downhill. So at this point for me, there is still some good news in that although dementia is relentlessly changing the me that I myself and some of you are familiar with, at this stage I still have enough of my familiar self to relay to you at least something of how this challenging diagnosis is unfolding. So first of all, quite a bit has changed. A few short months ago, it was straightforward and easy for me to prepare a presentation. It was not so easy this time. However, I am here and have material that I hope will be both interesting and of value to you. Interestingly, the process of putting this talk together has become a lens through which I can more easily see and identify at least some of the things that are changing in my brain. Before launching into my personal dementia journey, though, I'd like to do just a quick review of the terminal illness known as dementia. So starting with a basic definition, dementia is a disease in which a person develops significant difficulties with normal daily functioning due to diminished capacities of thinking and memory. Further, dementia is not actually a single disease, but it's rather a category of diseases, like, say, heart disease. That's a pretty good comparison, actually. Disorders grouped under the general term dementia are neurological conditions that affect the brain. These neurological changes in the brain trigger diminishment of thinking skills, or what we think of as our cognitive abilities. These neurological changes are severe enough to impair daily life and most commonly eventually curtail independent functioning. As well, and importantly, these unstoppable brain changes affect behavior, feelings, and emotions, and therefore ultimately affect all personal relationships. Let me say that again, because it's the big piece. These unstoppable brain changes affect behavior, feelings, and emotions, and therefore ultimately affect all personal relationships. Symptoms of dementia include, but are not limited to, memory loss, diminishment of thinking and reasoning skills, personality changes, confusion, linguistic problems, and lapses in judgment. The most common causes of dementia are vascular dementia and Alzheimer's disease, both of which are having a huge impact on our cohort of retirees. That's why we're all here today, because we know that to be true. So my comments today will mainly pertain to vascular dementia, of course, the type that I'm experiencing. So vascular dementia is a decline in thinking skills caused by conditions that reduce blood flow to various regions of the brain. When blood flow is reduced to the brain cells are deprived of oxygen, vital oxygen. Inadequate blood flow damages and eventually kills cells anywhere in the body, but the brain is especially vulnerable. Oh, and I also should mention that in some circles, the term vascular dementia has been upwardly defined as vascular cognitive impairment, or VCI, because it better expresses the reality that vascular thinking impairment can range from very mild to extremely severe. Common early signs of small vessel disease, in addition to memory loss, are impaired planning and judgment, impaired function in social situations, and increasing difficulty in finding the right words. The only reason that I'm able to stand here today and present information to you is that I am still in a momentary sweet spot with only memory loss and some degradation of planning skills. But change is constant. So I'm constantly going downhill. So, as if this were not already grim enough, it appears that vascular dementia frequently coexists with other types of dementia, most commonly Alzheimer's and dementia with Lewy bodies, which frequently accompanies Parkinson's, by the way, if you happen to know Parkinson's people. In my case, I had a genetic study done which showed that I have one of two Alzheimer's genes. So it won't be at all surprising if I develop symptoms of Alzheimer's along with the vascular dementia. So at this point, a good question could be, how does one manage to carry on, one foot in front of the other, with hopefully a smile on one's face, with the prospect of inevitable mental decline and decay? That's the question with which I grapple, and which some of you will surely grapple. So inevitably, dementia brings on personality changes, which we pretty much assume to be negative. However, the late Dr. Oliver Sacks, wonderful man, recounts that Ralph Waldo Emerson was most cheerful when in his 60s he began sinking into oblivion. When a friend asked how he was, Emerson reportedly said, "Quite well. I have lost my mental faculties, but I am perfectly well." He could not remember his own work, but he continued to give lectures by reading his notes, often joking that he was a lecturer who has no idea what he's lecturing about. And to back up his point, very nearly the same thing is happening here today. So the assumption is that Emerson suffered from what is known as pleasant dementia. So pleasant dementia features deterioration of the frontal lobes and therefore affects the systems associated with self-evaluation, scrupulosity, and anxiety. My mother had pleasant dementia for 24 years. She was nearly totally deaf and relegated to a wheelchair in a nursing home, where she wheeled around the hallway in a line of wheelchairs. She did that for nearly a decade. The last time I was in Indiana, I visited her, and I joined her at her meal table where she was being spoon-fed. I asked her if she knew who I was. She said no. I sat there for a while, amazed at watching an adult spoon-feed my mom and wipe her chin. Eventually I got up and walked over to her good ear and shouted, "Mom, are you happy?" She paused for a second or two and then responded clearly, "Yes, I am very happy. Thank you so much for asking." It was perfect. The politeness of Mom was still in there. So, I thought that was pretty extraordinary, but now that she's gone, that's turned into a precious memory. So one aspect that especially interests me is the potential similarity between pleasant dementia and the state of meditative mindfulness. I've been a Buddhist practitioner for more than 30 years, during which time I have been cultivating such traits as acceptance, letting go, being here now, etc. So to me, it's intriguing to consider what it means to necessarily live in the present moment all the time, for that is what dementia inevitably brings. However, I must note an important distinction. Those who are pleasantly demented, like my mother, are definitely not functional. They're only pleasant. They may not know where their clothes are or what meal is about to happen, but they possess equanimity and good cheer. I gotta say, that's sounding good to me. In case you are curious, there appears to be not a shred of ongoing research into what makes one person with dementia become belligerent and another serene. It's just unknown. So standing here before you today at age 73, I think, with the diagnosis of vascular dementia, I wonder what the future has in store for both David, my spouse of 33 years, and myself. Maybe Ralph Waldo Emerson's way is a model, conveyed in his poem Terminus, which he wrote at age 63 when his mind was slipping away. And I quote, Ralph Waldo Emerson, "What a sanguine injunction," I thought, "not only for my mother, but for those of us who may follow on that ship. May we sail without fear, and may the weather be pleasant." So,
Keith Coates. I was a caregiver for my wife Carol through 8 years of dementia, through all the stages and all the stress, and prime caregiver in the home until she went into residential care, and then as a secondary caregiver. And that was both in Canada and here in Aiheek. I was going to refer to something Karin finished with on the medication, which I don't have in my spiel here, but my experience as a caregiver with the medications was that their impact is to slow down the decline, but that when the medication starts to lose its effectiveness, there's a plateau and then a drop.
Yike.
Smack me now. So, thinking that the medication is a cure, it isn't.
Yes.
It isn't. Anyway, Karen's given you a look at dementia from the aspect of the sufferer. I try and share some of my experiences, give you a look from the other side of the dementia equation to the caregiver. Early signs of dementia, and I'm just going to use a collective because they're all much of a muchness, can be very difficult to recognize. We may think of them as normal signs of aging, senior moments. Okay? I forgot to take my library books back, which cost me 28 pesos. That was a senior moment. It's not dementia. We will all, as we age, and we're all aging, sadly, be subject to normal aging. Eyesight fails a little bit, balance goes a little bit, decision making can be slowed. That's normal. When we get into the dementia field, these things become exaggerated. Early diagnosis is very important. Although medications do not cure, they will slow down. And the sooner you get into them, you, the sufferer, can get into them, the better. If your loved one experiences any of these symptoms, consult a physician. You have to get a proper diagnosis. And the common ones, cognitive change in memory. Can't remember where she put the car keys. Maybe they're in the freezer. They have been in the freezer. Maybe she can't remember that we had supper. Maybe she can't remember, as things get worse, the children's names. Maybe she can't remember you. Been through all that. Difficulty in performing familiar tasks. Dressing. Putting the clothes on inside out. Putting the pants on and then the underwear over the pants. All these are signs. I mean, I'm exaggerating, they're fairly gross signs. There's a lot more subtle things that go on before that. Putting things in odd places. Having language problems. Not being able to find the right word. I want to go to the store. Not being able to enunciate the sentence, and it can be simple or complex. Using the wrong name for things. Holding up a spoon and saying, "This is a knife." Okay? Stuff like that. Changes in personality. Maybe those who have the, what do you call it, beneficial? Pleasant dementia. Are lucky. They're also, in my limited experience, rare. Generally speaking, and I think it's a function of the frustration that the sufferer feels, generally speaking, the behavioral changes are for the worse. They can get to the point of violence. If you're in a situation, as I was, watching this happen, be prepared for violence. If it doesn't happen, good. If it does, it's not your fault. It's not the sufferer's fault. It's that damn disease is what's doing it. So look at your loved one's behavior. And if you see the warning signs, do something about it. Get the diagnosis. When we lived in British Columbia, I was very lucky because there was a whole spectrum of diagnostic and treatment options available to me. And I made it my business to find out what they were and to make myself an absolute pain in the side until we got what we needed. Sometimes you have to do that too. So, don't be put off by it. One of the reasons, as Lila said, the memory losses is here, is to help you, when you get to that situation, to identify what's available to you here. Where to go for diagnosis, where to go for help. And one caveat, there is a tendency at the early stage to go into denial. By the sufferer, there is nothing wrong with me, I'm just tired. I had a busy day, so I forgot. I forgot where I parked the car because I was preoccupied. There's also a tendency for the caregiver. She'll snap out of it. If she would just focus, we'd be okay. Why can't you remember that we just had supper? Was it so bad? Don't let that happen. There's nothing to be gained by denial. Denial is not just the river of Egypt, okay? Don't let that happen. The actions and behaviors will inevitably become worse over time. And the impact of those behaviors on you as a caregiver will also increase. Now these worsening actions can be, as I said before, violence against a caregiver or family members, dangerous behavior, and physical changes such as incontinence. Not something we like to talk about. But when you know that your loved one has gone into a washroom in a store and missed the toilet bowl completely, you will know what I mean about the impact of someone else's incontinence on your life. It's not very nice. And again, it's no one's fault. I do remember finding Carol walking along the railroad tracks at midnight. I'd been out to meeting something, she was looking for me, in her nightgown and slippers, in the railroad tracks, when mile-long coal trains came through every hour. That was a touch worrying back then. Another night when she put an empty pan on the stove, let it get red hot, took it off, put it on the arborite counter, went to bed. Nothing caught fire. I had to replace the arborite completely. Nothing caught fire, thank God. But it could have done very easily. And then coming through Hong Kong airport, I had to find where our next flight went from. I said, stay here, don't move. 5 minutes later, there she was gone. Now you want to panic. You've ever been in Hong Kong airport? It's an absolute war. And I don't speak too much Mandarin. These things do happen. Be aware of it. And again, it's not the person's fault. She didn't know she'd wandered off. She had no idea where she was, what we were doing. These things will give you stress. Caregiver stress is very common. As a caregiver, you're thrust into a situation for which you're probably ill-prepared. So stress is inevitable. Those of you that have children, you remember the stress of having a newborn in the house for the first time? Now, put yourself 50 years into the future, and it's like dealing with a newborn. Again, very stressful. If you experience these symptoms, This is for the caregiver. You need help. Denial. Anger. Why is this happening to us? What did we do wrong? Social withdrawal. Many times we like to think that people don't pull away from dementia sufferers and caregivers. Maybe it's that as the caregiver, you're embarrassed to take the loved one into a social situation where you don't know what she's going to do. But there is social withdrawal. Worst thing. Anxiety about the future. Okay, she's only 65. It was 65 when this happened. We got into this. She's only 65. How long is this going to go on? How am I going to be able to cope when I'm 70, 80, 90? Can we financially afford this? All kinds of stuff. Depression. I'm clinically depressed. I was diagnosed years ago. This sure as hell didn't help. Exhaustion. You don't go to bed. You don't go into a deep sleep because you don't know what she's going to do. Sleeplessness, yes. Irritability. Well, you can imagine. Lack of concentration. You're trying to hold down a job, look after the house, look after a demented person who's rapidly getting worse. Very hard to concentrate. And from that can come health problems. Your autonomic system, autoimmune system rather, can become depressed with all these other things. You may find yourself, as a caregiver, much more getting colds more frequently, flu more frequently, whatever, anything like that. If these things happen, talk to somebody, go to your doctor, get help, look for support mechanisms and use them. You get no medals for sitting at home being a hero. You'll get an early grave. Now remember, you are often the sole caregiver. You cannot depend on family and friends. In my case, our case I should say, we had 3 sons, none of whom lived closer than about a 4-hour drive. Our only other family was in the UK. And with all the will in the world, friends will not be there when you need them. For a lot of reasons. They don't know how to cope. I think sometimes that some of them think it's contagious. Despite their assurances, you can't depend on family and friends. So if you crack under the strain, there may be no one to take your place. Now it can be even worse, obviously. So looking after yourself is vital, and I stress this every time I talk to people on this subject. It's not selfish to look after yourself. It's selfish not to. Because if you go, there's nobody left. And I don't care that your Aunt Fanny said she'll be there to help you out. No, she won't. Take that as given. To reduce the stress, join a support group. I belong to a support group in Fernie where we lived, another one in Cranbrook where we eventually moved, and one here that Valerie runs. Saved me. Without the support groups, I would not have coped. The advantage of a support group is that you're there with people who have the same experiences that you're having. Some earlier in the journey, some later. The beauty is that you find that you're not alone. I'm not the only person as a 72. Well, my spouse went out for coffee and forgot where she lived. Oh, mine did that. Suddenly you find we're a community. God help us, we're a community. So join a support group. There are all kinds of online discussion boards you can access. Excellent one through Alzheimer's Association, where you can post a specific question and other people will answer. My wife got in the habit of biting her fingers. It was a way I'm told of her removing stress. She used to bite her fingers till they bled. So I posted that on this discussion board. And the suggestion I got was, you can't beat it. She's going to do this. Buy her a baby's teething ring. Let her bite on that. And it worked. She'd take that. I went to the Galapagos and brought back a blue-footed booby, a stuffed one with a long beak. Took it, stripped it off. I'd take it away eventually. Bits would come. Anyway. So use those kind of things. Take time for yourself. Get help. You can't do it alone. I don't care how big and strong and tough and worldly and wise and rich you are. You cannot do it alone. Take that from one who tried. Okay, you need respite. And that's more than someone watching your loved one for half an hour while you go for coffee. That's not respite, that's just a break. You need to be able to physically, mentally, emotionally get away from the stressful situation of being a caregiver. And don't let anybody tell you that that's you being selfish. Because I got that, I took a trip to Cuba. That was death, well not death's door, but at the end of my rope, took a trip to Cuba. And one of the other members of the support group told me I was being really selfish. Till I came back and she saw how much better I was. And she agreed. This is essential. You may feel bad. It was the first trip I'd been on my own in 40 odd years. And the first few days were terrible. Well, why am I here? Why isn't she with me? Shouldn't I be home? The advantages and the benefits of taking that trip were incalculable. Anyhow. Caregiver fatigue is linked to stress. If you're having bad days almost every day, if you feel your efforts are useless, no matter what I do, nothing ever gets better. If you're withdrawn from your friends and family, if the things you used to do no longer give you a sense of pleasure, you're depressed, irritable, or angry most of the time. Some people would say that always been that way, but it goes. You sleep or eat too little or too much, still carrying it. You've been sick more than usual, and the real big one, you're drinking more than usual, seeking respite in the bottle. Been that, done that, got the overweight to prove it. If you experience any of those elements of fatigue, be aware of them. Don't beat yourself up about it. Do something about it. Okay. Isolation is a major problem. Don't let it happen. I did. We used to go places together. I no longer felt I could take Carol anywhere. So she stayed home, I stayed home. Cut myself off from pretty well everything. Stupidest thing I ever did. It really doesn't help you. It doesn't help a loved one. So, no isolation. Okay, I'm talking about you. Make the home safe. It's like childproofing a home for a toddler. You know, when your baby starts to walk, what do? You put all the poisons up high. You put all the knives in a locked drawer. Yeah, that's exactly what you do with a dementia patient. Remove tripping hazards. I'll guarantee you, if you went back to where you live right now and really looked at it, you'd find 4 or 5 real tripping hazards. It's okay for you, but with a dementia patient who is losing focus, it can be lethal. I said this to a group of dog lovers at one point, thought I'd get lynched. The worst tripping hazard is a dog. They think they're being friendly. The dementia patient doesn't even notice it. Okay. Put gates across stairwells. Put childproof covers over power outlets. Use night lights. If the patient may fall out of bed, consider hip protectors. You can buy, like hockey hip protectors, you can buy them in most medical stores, padded on the hips. A broken hip for an elderly person is a death sentence, let's face it. You can put foam mats beside the bed, have grab bars installed in the bathroom, ensure the water temperature is not scalding hot. The dementia patient not thinking will turn the hot tap on full. Scott, don't do it, don't let it happen. Okay, wandering, ever-present concern. Use child-proof locks on doors. There are things you can buy that will make it difficult for someone, a dementia patient, to open them. You can get these things, again, when you've had small children. They're like a plastic cover that goes over the doorknob. I was really clever, I bought those. All our doors had lever. So you do have to think a little bit. Keep car keys out of sight. I can't stress that enough. If the patient does elope, and that's what they call it in care homes, they don't call it running away, they call it eloping. If the patient does elope, alert the neighbours, friends, check familiar places where they might go, and inform the police. There are electronic GPS devices you can get for dementia people that may wander. I don't know exactly what's available here, but you can find out. Okay, taking the car keys away, one of the hardest things to do, because you're taking away independence. But it has to be done. I had to do this after Carl had taken the car, this is early stages. Went shopping, hit 2 cars in the parking lot. Drove home, and I looked at our vehicle, said, what are those debts? She didn't know. They deny they pose a hazard. I said, you can't drive anymore. So, she produced a driver's license and said, this is good till 2010. Yes, I can drive. So, hard to argue with that logic. Many times, it's preferable to get the doctor to take the keys away, rather than do it yourself. Okay, guilt. Biggest single issue. None of us are perfect. Do the best you can, don't beat yourself up when you don't do as well as you think you could have done. It's a horrible sentence, isn't it? The onset of dementia is not your fault. The behaviors are not your fault. There's nothing you did that brought this on. There's nothing you can do that will lessen it. So if you do feel guilt, get it out. Talk to people in a support group. Admitting to guilt is not a sign of weakness. I've spent time in several support groups saying I feel guilty that I think that there's more I could have done earlier to make this less impactful. No, there wasn't. You do the best you can, and that is good enough. Okay, exercise, good for everybody. Very good for people with dementia. We have an exercise group for dementia people.
Yeah, well, Wayne is here.
Wayne?
He was here.
Is Wayne here?
There it is. Oh, there.
On Wednesdays at,
Alright.
it used to be the old Passover.
Yeah.
Okay? Very good for everybody. One of the best things I did for Carol was to hire a personal trainer. And she worked with Carol on 3 days a week for an hour, hour and a half. The advantages of that were not only the physical health, her posture improved, her breathing improved, digestion improved, but there for 3 times a week, there was an intense one-on-one relationship. Many people have told me that one of the things most lacking in care for dementia patients is the one-on-one involvement. So this was ideal. And it was tax deductible, which also helps. I believe that it extended Carol's quality of life for over a year, which is purely subjective, but I think so. The day will come when, as a caregiver, you will have to admit you can't cope. Once the lack of sleep and the stress and the frustration get overwhelming, look for a good facility. You will know, as a caregiver, when that time comes. For me, it came when I got close to hurting physically. I got so mad, I was almost at the point of smacking him. And you can only leave and recover your patients so many times. So, that was the breaking point. And I didn't feel good about it. I still don't. But it was the only thing to do. It was either that or do a physical damage. And I'm not proud of saying that. But I'm forewarning you that it may, saying it will, it may happen to you as a caregiver. You're not Superman, you're not Superwoman. Everybody encouraged me at the time to find a place in a facility for full-time care. And best thing I ever did, I guess. When you're looking at a care facility, some things to look at. Resident care staff ratio, and how many nurses are on duty for how many staff. The appearance of the current residents, are they clean? Are their clothes clean? And I had to, the place in Canada where she was, I had to get upset when she appeared the 3rd day running in the same clothes. No. This is a woman who's a dignified person. You do not bring her back out in the clothes she wore yesterday. Oh well. Relation between staff and residents, you can tell. Is it a family orientation where there is affection? Is it institutional where things run by the clock? You can tell. The facilities are clean, nicely decorated. The thing that struck me about the facility I moved Carol into in Ahihik was that it was Mexican. It was brightly painted, colourful, warm, felt like a home. Place in Canada, aseptic, white, plain wooden millwork, plain furniture. I don't know, maybe I overstress it, but to me the difference was huge. Is the food cooked close to the dining room? Again, in Canada it was cooked in a central kitchen and came in steam trays. Might or might not still be hot. In the place in Ahihik, the kitchen was right beside the living area. They could see the food being prepared, they could smell it, like being at home. Medical staff on call. Frequency of resident bathing, again, was important to me. 1 shower a week if she needed it or not, to a daily shower. May not have meant anything to her at her stage, and a hell of a lot to me. And if I feel better, he will. Oh, accessibility, grounds and garden, do they have pets? Really look at the interaction. Make time to talk to the staff and to residents. The place I chose here One of the reasons I chose it was because the manager was more than happy to give me contact for families of 3 residents that I could contact independently of her and get their opinions. And they were all very supportive of the place. Made it easy. And we have a checklist you can use to evaluate facilities, or any of us can talk to you about facilities here. Anyhow, in conclusion, thank God for that, Lisa. Do not, and I'll emphasize it, do not try to do this alone. Ask for help. No one will think any less of you. Deal with stress. It's going to happen. Accept it. Deal with it. Don't push it away and hide it. Don't let your pride stand in the way of getting the help you need. Look after yourself. And don't let anybody tell you you're being selfish for looking after yourself, because you are not. Anyhow, that's it for me. So any questions?
Questions? Comments? Yes.
Karen, you mentioned a genetic test that you had done to discover
Yes.
that you had two possibilities of Alzheimer's. What is that test called?
Yeah, I did that through, so David, it was 23andMe.
Oh.
Have you,
The advertisement
if you
told me.
just go Google 23andMe,
Mhm.
it'll come up.
Okay,
Yeah,
Thank
yeah,
you.
that's where.
thank you.
Yes.
Do you find that you have good days and bad days or better days?
I am beginning to experience that.
And
But I hadn't before, and I was reading about it and wondering, and yes, I think that's going to come along, that is coming along. Interesting thing, I just flew in from sea level, where I was functioning way better than here. So it is oxygen related. There's no question about the fact that it's oxygen related, but, I mean, I got on the plane in Portland, Oregon, one person, and I got off the plane in Guadalajara, another. I mean, it really is. I feel it. I feel the difference. So,
do you have any idea why you have the better days? Is it related to anything?
no. I've never even read any explanation for that. So, you know, why that's a little confusing is that we have good days and bad days in any case without the dementia,
Yes.
right? So I think I'm just believing that the same thing is just going on, only in a demented head instead of an undemented head. Yeah. So I don't know, I just made that part up. But that's what it feels like, anyway, to me. Yes.
How have your friends and acquaintances coped with the changes that they're seeing in you? If they have.
You know what? I'm not experiencing, I mean, it is interesting, because I was just home with family, and even though I was at lower altitude, still, people were noticing little things, and friends were noticing little things.
Supportive? People have
Yeah.
been supportive?
Oh, yeah.
They're not falling away from you?
No.
That's good.
No, but I can understand. I mean, I didn't fall away from my mother, but on the other hand, it just wasn't gangs of fun going and seeing her either. So, you know, some of that
May change.
may change.
I hope not.
Yeah. Yes.
But when you called it vascular dementia, You're referring to the blood flow system to the brain?
Yeah, I have hypertension
Yes.
since age 16, and I've been treated my whole life, nonetheless.
It's deteriorated blood vessels. How about low blood pressure? Could you have those type of symptoms if you had extremely low blood pressure?
I don't think so. No, I think it's a high blood pressure disease. It's hypertension is what it is. And it's not like, you know, I'm sure when I was young, doctors were saying, well, you know, just cool it, just relax. It's not about that. It's actually the brain performing. Yes?
What were your first signs?
Oh, boy. First signs, David. I mean, just forgetfulness.
Repeating yourself.
Oh, repeating myself. Ha! And not knowing.
Yeah.
Over and over. Yeah, yeah.
Does stress have any effect?
Yes, absolutely. The more stress, the more tension in the brain, and the more that I'm likely to perform in a demented way. Yes.
Well, does that in itself create stress?
Yeah, a little bit. Sure. Yeah. I mean, I'm working on just trying to relax with the situation, and because obviously that kind of mindset of saying, oh my God, am I going to forget? And I'm tense here in this moment. That makes it worse. It makes it even worse. So, and the other way of dealing with it is just not getting, which I do some of too, just not getting too whipped out of shape about it, you know?
So that do you find yourself trying at times to prepare for a situation where you can ward off? You don't find that you're wanting to do that?
No.
Can everyone hear the question?
No, yeah, but say the question again louder.
Do you find yourself in a situation where you're trying to prepare yourself to ward off one of the symptoms or the...
Well, I mean, I prepared my talk for today. Yes, but it's maybe yes, but generally no. I just go along, show up and do stuff. And I recognize that I'm different. I recognize that I'm different than I was 6 months ago, and definitely different than I was a year ago.
So are we all.
We all are.
Have you adjusted to that?
Yeah.
Or does it bother you?
Speak louder.
Huh. Well, I suppose it bothers me, but there's no benefit really in holding that thought of being bothered by it, because that doesn't get me anywhere other than worried and stressed. So I kind of try not to.
Do you think that your earlier personality will affect how you deal with Alzheimer's?
I think that's absolutely so. Oh, I mean, I'm hoping it's true for me, but I know it was true for my mother. She, in her worst Alzheimer's state, was still happy, kind, jovial, you know, not making sense necessarily, but her base personality was there. So, and I suppose somebody can hop up and say, well, my so-and-so was very pleasant and then got demented and was very unpleasant. So I'm sure that can happen too. At the moment, I believe I'm still pleasant.
When did you get your test done? Did you get it when you had some inclination that this was happening?
Yes.
You didn't get it done many years ago
No,
because of your...
No. David and I were seeing that it was happening and knowing that it was likely to happen just because of my family. And then I went and was tested and sure enough. Yeah.
My mother had Alzheimer's, and one of the symptoms that I found interesting, she lost some of her inhibitions.
She lost some of her inhibitions.
Yes.
Oh yes, I've read about that. Right. I haven't yet, but it's a good. So we're talking about running around the neighborhood in no clothes and stuff, like that kind of, right, that, I know that's an exaggeration, yes. Mm-hmm.
That's more likely with Lewy body dementia.
Is it? Is it, okay, so that's more Lewy body dementia
No,
then?
really, it's frontal temporal lobe dementia. Lewy body.
Wait, you're right.
Yes,
Yes, right.
frontal temporal lobe dementia.
Uh-huh, okay, thanks.
It's comparatively rare.
Yes, it's comparatively rare. Yeah, I think what I have is probably the most common. Yeah.
When you talked about having a diagnosis, was there something they can do very definitive to say that you will go along that path, or is it very subjective? The test.
So David, I need you to help with that answer.
If they're, she mentioned that she had a diagnosis of this condition. Is it very definitive that they do some type of blood sample, or they do extract some tissue, or is it very subjective based on performance and degradation of that performance?
It's more subjective based on performance. They do take brain scans, MRIs, which can show things like small strokes, transient events.
Yeah, I just have TIAs.
Yes.
Yeah.
But there is
Not
no
just.
real external test presently for Alzheimer's. Or, and it's basically just a guess based on the development and performance, whether you have Alzheimer's, vascular dementia, Lewy body, frontal temporal lobe.
Okay, thank you.
I think for the most part, it's just an educated guess on the part of the neurologist.
That's what I thought.
Yeah. Yes.
Are you taking medication?
Yes.
And is it helping?
Who would know, actually? The only thing I take is Sermian, right? For the vascular dementia.
Now you're taking Epixa, it's an Alzheimer's drug.
And aren't I taking Sermian too?
Yes.
And Epixa, I'm taking 2 drugs.
Do you think it helps with the symptoms?
The question is.
I'm pretty
does it help? Sorry.
afraid not to take.
I didn't hear the question. Does it help? Is that what she said?
Does it help? And I don't know, because I don't want to stop taking it to see if I get worse, frankly. So I just do it out of hope.
First of all, I want to thank both of you for very well presented, very well organized, and informative presentations.
The repetition, what time is it? What time is it? What day is it? Monday. What day is it? Monday.
Exactly.
When are we having supper? We have it. Over and over and over.
I wanted to mention one other thing. I was in Toronto. In Toronto, when I had a problem with my mother going off and getting lost, after about a second time, I think it was, I found out that the police will accept photographs of the person, and they'll have, they will have it registered so that if anybody finds this, and I found a couple of times the police brought her back.
We had that in BC through the local RCMP. They put a phone on file with a picture or a description. Luckily, the only time she eloped there, we found her quickly. But she went on a trip to Mesa Verde in Colorado, I think. And I'd stopped to the gas station. She wanted to use the bathroom. I parked, but I couldn't see the door. I'm an idiot sometimes. After about 20 minutes, I realized she'd come out, didn't see the car, took off down the road. Luckily, Highway Patrol found her, and I found the sheriff's office. So between us, we located her. Absolutely panic stricken.
You talked about being the individual caregiver,
Mm-hmm.
and then when it got way too much, having her in a living arrangement. But you didn't say anything about having in-house care. Certainly in our community, that's much more affordable than it would be in BC.
No, I didn't, because it's not something that I could probably have got it. But then the question is, can I live with another person permanently in the house with us? And my answer to that was no, I can't. If I could have, maybe it would have worked for a time. And that in-house care, I think, realistically is a short-term solution, because as the dementia worsens, you can't get around the decision to put the person into residential care. It's going to happen eventually. But if you have, access to in-home care and it works, yeah, great.
It doesn't reduce the frustration and the stress of interacting with the person all the time as well. Plus it adds another person in your household.
Yes, ma'am.
I want to thank you for a courageous presentation. You used a lot of humor to lighten your struggle, and yet you didn't list sense of humor on your list of qualities that you need to get through this.
Yeah.
I think that's really important.
Yeah.
It is.
So if you don't stick it out as long as Keith did, I don't think there should be any guilt
No.
associated with that.
I think, in response, maybe this is not true. I think placing a parent easier than
Yes.
placing a spouse.
Yes.
Yes.
I had one girl tell me, actually, buying whiskey in the liquor store, it was an ex-student of mine, and said I was thinking of putting Caroline care, and she said, "You married her for better or worse, for sickness, I could have slapped her face, except I didn't get caught the next day." I said, "Well, when you've walked a mile in my shoes, you stupid person." But I think placing a parent or even a sibling is easier than placing a spouse. My personal opinion, I've got nothing to back that up.
Definitely the spouses we worked with were torn up about it. So were the children we worked with, torn up about it. But there, at least in the US, there were so many options, though very expensive, and not covered by Medicare. So,
Yeah, again,
just a side comment.
I was fortunate because I have a very good accountant. And managed to work things so that I got a very low rate in the home. However, for people that can't pull that kind of strength, and Canadian costs are probably a third in the US. And the drain on the economy, well, we didn't get into that, I'm not going to, but it will become almost unsupportable. They call it a grey tsunami. And I can see that. Also, the average age of incidence of various dementias seems to be getting lower all the time. And at the same time, we're living longer. Something's going to break someday. Just make sure it isn't you. Anything else? Yes, Lauren.
I just wanted to mention that I've done some investigation, just very superficially, about what it costs to put someone to be in care here in Mexico. And it's about a third of what I would pay in the United States. So I can live in Mexico for the rest of my life in care, good care, family care, in a beautiful spot, and not have to worry about, I can do that on my Social Security. I couldn't do that in the U.S.
Let me give you a slightly unrelated statistic. It was worked out that a couple could go on world cruises permanently
Yes.
for less money than living in a care home.
Yeah, and you get doctors there.
And that is completely, totally bogus. To use a word my kids used to use on my slang. But anyhow, anything else? Yes, sir.
You had mentioned something about several times making sure that you speak to a doctor.
Yep.
Is it your understanding that generally speaking, doctors are emotionally and professionally attuned to the needs of a family that's in that kind of trouble?
Well, I can only answer from my own experience. When I talked to our family doctor, he said I'm referring you to a specialist. If he hadn't said, I'm referring you to a specialist, I would have said, you are referring me to a specialist. So, yes, family doctors, I think it's fair to say, this is outside their purview, really. It's not something that you can treat with a pill. Take 2 aspirins and call me in 6 months. That's not going to work. Go to a specialist. Again, I was lucky. I knew enough people in the system to cut through the red tape. Go to a specialist. There's a very good one in Aki that you can get to.
And doctors here, I know this from personal experience, have been willing to take keys, tell people they can't drive, write letters to them so that when they don't remember that they can't drive, they can take, their caregiver can take the letter out and see. As long as you sort of prompt the doctor beforehand and you go in and you meet together and they say, no, you can't drive anymore. So in IHE, they are more sensitive because we're an elderly population.
Yes.
Oh, I was just gonna add on the driving thing. I solved it by just quitting driving myself. I mean, I have stopped driving earlier than I think I would really have to, just because it's stressful to drive. It just seems easier not to drive and safer. So I just up and did that on my own as opposed to having to be prodded.
And you did get lost once, you remember?
Oh, yeah, oh, right, well, right, getting lost thing was my big thing. Right, yes, you're right.
My wife, we had to go to see a neurosurgeon in the hospital in Canberra, and he came in from another town about 60 miles away. And he was a young, I mean, all doctors are babies, with wearing cowboy boots, and he sat down, he was going to start the interview. She looked at his boots and said, your shoes are filthy, young man. Does your mother know you come out like that? And I was about, But on the topic of powers of attorney, it's very important that if you're going to get a power of attorney, do it while the person is still compos mentis. I beat it in BC by probably 3 months. But if I waited any longer, the lawyer would not have signed it. So do it sooner rather than later. And if you never need it, good. But if you do, and you ain't got it, I'd have been stuck with an unsaleable house because it was in both our names and I couldn't sell it. Okay, anything else? If not, thank you very much. And
Thank you. So when Karin was diagnosed with dementia, she decided to be proactive. And she decided to find out what was available here for people in this situation, and there wasn't very much. So she got together with a small core group of people to address those needs. And so memory loss resources, which I can never say for some reason, was formed to help to address those needs. And the first thing that Karin wanted was a support group, and for people who are dealing with dementia. And so we created Lost Keys, which is a free support group for people who are having memory issues and who want to talk with other people and get support and get tips, and also, according to Karin, laugh a lot about the challenges that they deal with that nobody else can understand. And then the second group we wanted to help were the caregivers of people who have dementia. And so we have a free caregiver group for that, which isn't only dementia, but it's mostly dementia now. And the third part of this is our trying to help people manage the labyrinth of decisions and bureaucracy in making the final decision about whether or not to put someone in care. And so to help with that, we created some forms that have all the questions that we could come up with that people might want to take with them when they go to care facilities. We have gone and checked out most of the care facilities, but some of them have changed management since then and more have been created. So this is an ongoing project. We're also willing to walk you through the process by sitting down and talking to you and help you make the decision and or accompany you to care homes if that would be helpful. And we've also made up a list of the documents that you need, like legal power of attorney, medical power of attorney, those things. And those are all available on those little cards that you have. It has Leela's blog and our website and a Facebook page. So if you're interested in any of those forms, then you can get them from those sites. And in the back, we have sign-up sheets if somebody is interested in being in the Lost Keys support group, in the caregiver support group, in helping us with fundraising or PR or something like that that we could really use. Or if you want help in maneuvering this process, you can sign up there and we'll get back to you.